Hi guys, this is Jack from Team Empire, and today, or tonight rather, JC, Lupe, and I just got back from Clash of Nations Brankgate Season 2 at Infinity Cards Houston. It was a really fun event. I actually used JC's deck, his favorite deck, Nirvana Jheva, for the event, and it was super fun. I got top 8. I won myself this mat here. Unfortunately, I couldn't break into top 4, but I still had a great time regardless, and I would love to go over this deck with y'all. Again, preface, this is JC's deck. He built it. However, I did make one change to the list, and I think it worked out for the better. But let's get straight into the deck itself. The ride line goes without explanation. It's just, Reno, Rayu, and Jheva. If you've seen any crossover dress list, you know this ride line. This one calls a Trickstar from deck, literally the same thing as the last one. She checks top 7 for a Prayer Dragon. So normally you whiff off this effect, but sometimes when you hit it, you feel great. And this one's obviously your main grade 3 that restands your crossover dress units and then has a great discard effect. But that's all I'll be going over. It's not really important to the deck since every crossover dress deck will play this ride line. Oh my goodness. Go. Play 3 copies of Persona Ride. Even though Festival was available for this tournament, we do not play any Regalis pieces in this deck because the space is just way too tight. You need space for your crossover dress units, Persona Rides, and your Prayer Dragons, and Trickstars, obviously. So sometimes I just didn't see Persona Ride, which that happens, especially in this deck. It really hurts. Next up, for the crossover dress units, we play 2 copies of Bar and 1 copy of Braum for the grade 3s. Bar was really good when you're going first, and your opponent normally doesn't call anything going first because sometimes they don't know what the deck does and they want to play it safe. Or other times, if they're playing a deck like Gandiva, all of their effects activate when you're on Gandiva, so they don't want to call those down early. And if they do call one of those cards down, it's even better because you can just use Soul Blast 2 off Braum to pop it immediately and make a minus while also plussing yourself with the additional drive check. As for Braum, I'm thinking about JC and I were talking about bumping this up by 1 copy and taking out 1 copy of Bar, because with the current format and with the with Willista coming out, they're gonna have like a relatively full board, and so Bar becomes a lot weaker because of that. But Braum becomes all the stronger. And Braum, he came out like twice during the tournament, and when he did, I was always grateful because he was a big attacker, being 33 to 43k on Persona Ride turns. And even if I didn't hit Persona Ride, he was the most optimal target to call because he was 33, and all the other attacks are really small. So having a 33k attacker that you can restand and has actual hit pressure is great. Next, for the best card in the entire deck, literally is the sleeves for a reason. We have 4 copies of JC's favorite card, Mirror's Varina. This is the card I always went into turn 3, no matter what. I always trade the mulligan for him because he's just that good. He's 20k attacker. He allows you to countercharge and draw. Most of the time, I was at 1 CB anyways, so I could just use him and Nirvana, swing, draw, use Nirvana's effect, restand him, then swing again, draw 1. You don't even need to countercharge at that point. It's just helps you draw like a ton of cards. Normally I had like 10 card hands, which is insane. But so yeah, he's an obvious 4 of. I've seen some lists play like 2 of it or 3 of it. I don't agree with it. You need to see your 4 copies of Mirrors because the deck just turns off without him.
He just gives you so much freedom in the deck.
He really does.
Which is really nice.
And then we played 2 copies of Vils Varina. So Vils is really good for this current format because we have 3 decks. One of them is Gandiva, which obviously retires stuff, and having him as a 15k interceptor that can't be retired is really nice. We have our biggest weakness, which is Messiah, that binds your Varinas, and because of that, your Trickstars are going away. So going into this guy is essential, especially when going first, because you have a 15k attacker while your opponent's on grade 2. And I did use it against Jet, which was nice to have because they couldn't bottom deck it, which means my 15k interceptor was safe. Along with that, He's also pretty good in combination with one of the Prayer Dragons, Grail Lumire, because you can Soul Blast one, check top 7, add one of the Varinas to your hand and discard the other one, then use his effect when you use Crossover Dress to immediately add that card back, basically turning Grail Lumire into a +1.
Yeah, some people ask why we don't play more copies of this, but even though this card's nice to have against those matchups, this deck cannot really play a long game because it thins more now than ever, and because of that, it gets to deck out very quickly.
Oh my god, yeah. There were so many times where I came so close to killing myself instead of the opponent's killing me. Then for the final Varina in the deck, we play 2 copies of Arcs. Arcs is just great. You know, if you open with him when you're going second or going first and you just have him on turn 2, it's obviously insane. Turn 2 Arcs is great no matter which Nirvana deck you're playing him in. And obviously he is a 15k attacker, which sometimes if I was going first, I would just plop him down as a 15k attacker and call a Prayer Dragon behind my Vanguard. Just have an 18k attacker, which normally they would take. I would hit a trigger, put that on the Arcs, have a 25k attacker while they're still on grade 1. So a lot of time I push them to like 2 to 3. So he's really only good for that. Other than that, he's pretty much just a Varina name, so you can find him off Grail Lumire, send him to drop, and then put him as original dress for mirrors. Other than that, he's not that great in the late game.
You can also search him off of Stregalio before using Nirvana's skill, and then discard him so that way you have fuel for mirrors, which is really good.
I did that, I think, one time in the tournament. Then we have the boy, one of the best cards in the deck, Stregalio, because he allows you to search out your Trickstars, which is the most important thing in the world when it comes to certain matchups, like Jet. I actually only had one Trickstar on my turn 3 against the Jet that I lost against, and I saw Grail Lumire on like turn 5, and because Grail Lumire, wrong one, Stregalio on turn 5, and so because of that, he was able to tutor me into the Trickstar I needed. On top of that, with the inclusion of mirrors, that second skill actually is crazy because it allows you to get optimal boards for double Crossover Dress, which is what you always want to do with this deck, or that's like not always want to do, but that's the deck's highest ceiling. And having 2 Crossover Dress units at once, preferably mirrors and Bar or mirrors and Braum. So yeah, he's just insane. He's a great card for the deck. And like JC said, you can also search Arcs off of him in order to discard for Nirvana Jheva's effect. Then, this is the edit that I proposed to JC to change. He used to play 4 copies of Grail Lumire. I opted to play 3 copies of Grail Lumire because the deck searches and draws enough to where you'll more than likely see at least 1 Grail Lumire. And unless you're facing a deck like Messiah or Jet, this is pretty much always going to go into the drop zone, which means 1 copy of it, you'll always see it for the rest of the game. Because the reason why I want to see him is just because he's so good. You know, Soul Blast 1 to check top 7 and thin 2 cards out of your deck is crazy. On top of that, it allows you to put Varinas into the drop when you use your Mirrors Varinas effect. So, not much to say here. He's just a consistency card, and that goes crazy in a deck that used to have a lot of consistency problems.
Yeah. Another thing is, I didn't see all of Jack's games, but when I play this deck, I don't always thin 2, because you do still want to like draw into your Varinas, like after you set up your drop. I don't know how you played.
I pretty much just always did 2.
You always did
because I
2.
wanted to hit those triggers in the later game.
And then with the inclusion of like both of these Prayer Dragons, this deck is able to actually thin quite a bit because your ride line is ideally already going to thin 2 cards, and then Stregalio gets the 1, and then Grail Lumire gets the 2, which usually means by like turn 3, you could have thinned like 5 normal units out of your deck, which is really good.
And then for the final Prayer Dragon, making it 8, is the Urbargo. Sorry. This is one that JC was actually pretty opposed to for a long time, but I finally managed to convince him because we are playing Bar, this helps to clear those opponents' boards to help make Bar's second effect easier to pull off. But also, he soul charges, so if you use Grail Lumire's effect later on in the game, he'll have more soul for stuff like your Bars or your Brahms. But also, spot removal can be very nice against certain matchups. I didn't face any Willistas, but I know that popping those Yuikas is going to be super important for this format. So having this card is really nice just to be able to snipe those cards from the back row. I also used it once against Jet player to pop their Brainwash Swirler, which is great because I know if I let that thing on the field, it was going to completely destroy me. It just helps having... actually, Nirvana is one of the decks that can play like one-up Prayer Dragons because the deck thins a lot. And so if you have one in drop, you can just always bring it back unless you're facing them in that bottom decks or binds. So I think Urbargo is a great choice for like a one-up Prayer Dragon. Then we play 4 Trickstar. GC used to play 3, and this is the proposed change I had because 3 scares me because of matchups like Jet and Messiah, where even though it's searchable with Stregalio, you need to be able to see Trickstar more than you ever need to see your Prayer Dragons because it is the main card that you use for the entire deck to pop off. That's the only real change I added to the deck is just adding the 1 Trickstar, and also I want to thank Lupe, our teammate, for the 4th copy of Trickstar since we didn't have a 4th copy yet because this is kind of like, I kind of chose this deck to play off the cuff.
Very last minute.
Yeah, very last
Literally
minute.
before the turn started.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4 Trickstar I view as always essential. Then 3 PGs and then 1 Elementaria. It's just obvious choice. Every deck needs to play PGs, and in this Stride deck set meta, every deck needs to play the Elementaria, unless you're a grade 4 deck. Then for trigger ratios, 8 crit. Honestly, it was a great choice. Having those 15k shields really helps me against those big numbers that Gandiva makes, helping guard in the early game, and also just 8 crits better because there were times where I just double crit people for game because I wasn't winning a long game against the Lutetia player. Like, our game was just going on way too long, and we both had like 3 damage, and I was going to deck out before he decked out, and I swung with Jheva. He 2'd past it. I checked a crit, and I was like, okay, well, this game's going nowhere, so let's put all the effects on Jheva. And then the second check was this guy, so I just double crit him for game. And that Chronojet player, it was the same story. I stacked 2 crits on Jheva, putting them to 5, and I would have won, but that's just a whole other story that I'm not going to get into right now. But 8 crit I view as absolutely essential in this deck. Draw triggers, 3 draws, because you don't play fronts in this deck. There's no reason to. Draws are just better because you can stack them. If you only have 1 crossover dress unit, which does happen from time to time, normally it'll be mirrors. You want to stack your crits and your draws on that 1 card, and fronts aren't really good for that case. On top of that, the draw trigger helps you draw into more shield and more pieces, more importantly.
Yeah, defensive draws are broken.
Oh, they're insane. And then 4 heals, because, of course, you gotta play 4 heals. We did play 4 vanillas, though, because counter heals don't really work for me because they're never around when I actually need them. I don't know why, and some numbers are really big. Like Messiah, when you get to their Exilus turn, Messiah is already like 53 with an extra crit. And I don't want to drop 3 cards for 1 attack, especially when I have a PG in my hand. I'd rather just use the PG against that attack, so I can only use 2 cards. So I just think 15Ks are better, so you can guard with them early, or also just have like that little bit of extra shield can always save you. And then finally, 1 Dragon Empire OT, because this deck goes crazy when you check the OT, because Jheva's effect isn't once per turn. But not much to say here.
Can you just go through your matchups?
Yeah, so first match was a Gandiva player. I don't think he was a newer player. He just didn't know what Nirvana did. So I just spammed the board with like Trickstars and Prayer Dragons, and he didn't know what any of them did. I also went first, by the way. Or sorry, I went second. So he, on his first Gandiva turn, I had 2 Trickstars, and he activated Best Harvest, but he didn't know what Trickstar did. So he just activated the effect, and he basically wasted a Best Harvest for no reason. And he just didn't see any of his pieces, which is great, because I just went into mirrors and arcs, drew a ton of cards, and then I went to 5 on his next turn, on his Personae turn, because I just willingly wanted to. And then I went into mirrors and then bar and just swung with check crits with bar's effect, and it was just great. Then the second round was against a Lutetia player, which is a hard matchup, but not in that game. That was the game I was talking about where we weren't necessarily going anywhere with that game. We were both just drawing a lot of cards, both checking a lot of heals and a lot of defensives. So none of us were breaking through at all. And I had Braum on my field for that one. So he was always like a 43k attacker. So he kept attacking Braum, and I kept having to defend him because if I didn't, all the other attackers that are good in my deck draw cards or thin cards out of my deck. So that's why I wanted to keep him on the board. But then that was the game I just double crit him for game because sometimes you have to do that. And then third round was against Gandiva. This is the round in Swiss where I lost. I did make one major misplay. The whole game was pretty much like against me because I drew damage checked and milled a lot of my crossover dress units and Varinas early. I only had 2 mirrors in my deck by the time the game was over, and for like 3 turns straight, I was going like Prayer Dragon Beatdown, where I was just calling a bunch of Prayer Dragons and stuff. But the main misplay I had was that I discarded, I had an option between mirrors, bar, and Vills, and I discarded the Vills. I don't know why I did that, because Vills is essential in that matchup, and you gotta see him. So that was a major misplay there. The fourth round was against Zorga, and unfortunately, or fortunately for me, she didn't see her roaming prison dragons until like way later in the game, and she also didn't persona ride into the mask. She just did the regular mask and only activated an order. So I got pretty lucky there, but the rest of the game I just kept checking defensives, kept drawing cards. I double crossover dressed, and because they didn't hit any defensives, they just died. The final round of Swiss was against another Gandiva, and I managed to squeak it out because they went to 5 damage on my first Persona Ride turn when they didn't really have to. They could have just PG'd one of the attacks, which was nice for me. That was a misplay on their part. And then I later on just swung with Jheva. He made a 1 to pass, or she made a 1 to pass because the rest of her shield cards in her hand were not that big. She only had 6 cards in her hand, and I checked the draw for the game. The final round, or the first round of top 8, was against Jet, the game I keep referring to. And it was a good game. Lots of back and forth. Both our overs were out of deck really fast, so it wasn't really that sacky. And I made a huge misplay where I had 2 PGs in my hand. One was a regular PG, one was Elementaria. I was at 4 damage, and I had a bunch of shield and like mirrors in my hand. And he goes into his next stage because he top decks the Jet. And he's at 5, by the way. He swings with the next stage. I PG it with the regular PG. He checks his triple drive, checks 2 crits, and puts each of the crits on one of his rear guards, which that was rough. Then he used next stage's effect, and then swung with Chrono Jet. And for some reason, I got tunnel vision because I had Elementaria. I just instantly Elementaria'd against Jet, but I had no reason to. He had 7 crits out of his deck. And it was still like a pretty healthy deck. He hadn't been checking his upstreams at that point. So I would have been able to survive if I just no-guarded the attack because I would have only taken 1. And I didn't notice at the time, but my defensive was a draw trigger. So I would have drawn to the Trickstar and then just guarded the other attacks easier. I don't know if I would have won because he did drive check a PG. However, he was at 5 still. So I think I could have done some major damage. But those misplays happen. I got tunnel visioned. But overall, I had a really great time at the event. And I think all the mistakes I made, well, some of them were major. I think they weren't like completely dumbass moves. Like I think they all kind of I had my reasons for them, but they weren't very good reasons. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for my rounds. Anything else I should really say?
Just thank you for watching the video. Stay tuned for more competitive content.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss another video. See you later, guys, and remember to over-trigger your opponents.
Toxic.
And then moving on to the main deck, Persona Rides. Obviously, it's Persona Ride. Also, we do not play any of the, before anyone asks, even though Festival was legal for this event.
Any of the what?
What?
You just said any of the. You just said any of the.
Well, I cut myself off because I was gonna say something. Even though lyrical, even though Festival. Okay.
We just cut that.
No. You cut that part out.
Okay, right? you can. We don't play any of the.
We don't play any of that. then you should just move on. We don't play any of those.
Sorry, that was funny. That was so good.
I was
We
waiting, I was like, any of the one.
we don't play any of the.
I knew
Even
you
though
were
festivals.
You should leave that in.
Wasn't that fucking funny?
You should leave that a blooper. We don't play that
At the end, we don't play any of the. Even though festivals.
It's pretty funny.
Okay.
fuck y'all,
Okay.
alright?
So Jack, real quick, and then you can just cut into this. I'm recording right now, right above this shadow line. No. I like where you are. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just letting you know.
Okay, what I was gonna say
Yeah.
was, what I was gonna say is,
I'm sorry.
shut the fuck up! What a terrible
It
camera
was so
man.
funny. It was so funny. I'm sorry. I can chill. I can
Hold
chill.
it still.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. Go.
All right. So, Festival Collection 2023 was available to use for this tournament. However,
Why would you say it was available?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying so hard.
fuck off, JC.
Can you
alright?
start? Okay. Can you start over with 3 Persona Ride, please?
Oh my god, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. I'm good.
I'm terrible at talking, Lupin.
No.
You haven't
I'm
noticed.
sorry. I am ready. Go.
Okay. Next, we play 3 Persona Rides. We don't play any of the Regalis pieces in this deck because space is so tight. What is wrong with you?
I'm just having a good.
Shut the fuck up.
It keeps looping in my head. We don't play any.
Welcome, you know?
Dude, can you take a fucking break, bro? What the fuck's wrong
It
with
keeps
you?
looping. We're at 3.5 minutes.
Fucking hell.
Okay. This is. I mean it this time.
You
okay?
better fucking.
I mean it. Okay, go.
I'm gonna say the line. I'm gonna say the line, and you better not laugh. I'm gonna say it
Okay.
again.
Okay. I can do it.
Okay. Then we play 3 Persona Ride. God damn
I
it.
really expected you to just say, we don't play any of them.
No, I'm
What?
good. That wasn't me. That was
That
you.
was me. I
that was
fucked
you.
up.
We haven't even made it past Persona, right?
No.
It's because you're a terrible cameraman. Okay, then we play 3 Persona Rides. God damn it.
This is never gonna happen.
It's not going anywhere. Just